All right, people. So let's talk about releasing attachment, desire, and suffering, and how all of this plays into the everyday experience and other things like that. So basically, attachment is like the number one thing that keeps people in suffering. So when you attach yourself to something, then you're bound to experience a feeling of loss whenever that thing dissolves, right? So it's like the nature of this illusion, the nature of this lifetime, of this life here, is to release attachment. And so in order to learn to do that, the lifetime will present you with a lot of opportunities to attach to things. So it's kind of like whatever you came here in order to do, you are going to experience the opposite of that in order to push you into being what it is that you came to be. So in order to quickly accelerate your growth and quickly accelerate the way that you're experiencing everything, what you can do is you can learn how to release attachments, and you can learn how to witness desire and experience desire from a perspective that's more kind of detached from the outcome of a situation, circumstance, or thought. If you notice, when you think about something and you have a desire that's attached to that, then all of a sudden you feel an emotion, you feel a physical sensation. Most of the time it's in the stomach area. And it can almost feel like electric or like fire in the stomach. And that's just the physical kind of like connotation that's attached to it. But the point that I'm making is that when you experience the thought of that desire, as soon as you cling on to the kind of projection that you have of what you think is going to happen from fulfilling the desire, then you are basically caught. You're stuck. Not really stuck, but like you're stuck in a perspective of wanting to fulfill the desire. So say that you have the desire to eat food, and then or it's more like a craving to eat like sweets or something like that, right? And then say you buy the sweets. For me it's dates, so for other people it would be like ice cream or something like that. But so say you buy the dates, and then you go home and you put them up, and then somebody else comes and then they take them and they throw them away. And then when you come back, and then so when you decided to put them there, you thought to yourself, okay, I will enjoy this desire a lot more if I give myself a little bit of time before I indulge in it. So you left it there, and you left, and then when you come back, it's not there anymore. And then you get really upset, and you get angry at whoever threw it away. You recognize that desire that you had, the experience of that desire, as soon as you got to a point in your own consciousness or your mind where you, by the way, this is where that comes from. But yeah, as soon as you got to that space in your mind where you basically were just like, yes, this is what I'm going to do right now, and you made that decision that you were going to fulfill the desire, as soon as you were not able to fulfill the desire based on some sort of life circumstance, you basically you basically are subjected to negative emotion. You see what I mean? I got a text message, that's why I kind of like paused there for a second. But you basically you're subject to a negative emotion, because what happens is when you ever have a projection of what you think is going to happen or what you think that should happen, as soon as you project that outward and you think that is the only way for that thing to happen, and then it doesn't happen that way, then you feel suffering. You see? So it's like you have to keep going back and back and back and back in your consciousness to a point where you start to see these desires coming up, but you see the pointlessness of the desires as they're happening. You see what I mean? So you're like, oh, I feel this desire to do this right now. And it's like, okay, let's just sit here for a second and just look. And let's just see what would happen if I fulfilled it. Let's think about what would happen if I didn't fulfill it. You know what I mean? And like, you go into this thing and say you have cravings for things, or you want different things or whatever. Like, instead of just immediately indulging in the thing or whatever, you basically just sit there for a second, and then you look in yourself and you go, what do I think this thing is going to fulfill inside of me? What do I think that this is going to change in my perspective? What do I think this is going to change in the way that I feel about myself? You know, really ask yourself these deeper questions about these mechanical processes that you do every day. And notice when the mind has a clinging to desire, and when the mind has a clinging to desire, what happens is that it gets very, very caught up in that. And what I mean by that is that, like, it gets one-pointed, focused on fulfilling the desire. But if you were able to take that focus that you have on those desires, meaning like most of the time, desires, a lot of the times, the best way to explain a desire to people is sexual desire, because everybody's experienced that, or just about everybody's experienced that. So that is the equivalent of a desire, right? And it's like, as soon as you fulfill that, then you go back into yourself and you look, and then you're like, okay, I don't feel that much different, and it was only a couple seconds of pleasure, and that's it. And then you just keep, basically, after you fulfill the desire, what happens is that it goes away for a little bit, and then it comes back stronger, unless you've unless you found a method to use the desire to get rid of the desire. And the way that you do that is that you notice the ridiculousness of the fulfillment of the desire over and over and over again, over a span of time. For me, it took 6 to 8 months of looking, you know, like just constantly observing the self as it's doing these things, watching the self fall into the patterns, fall back out of the patterns, seeing the rises and falls in the experience when it comes down to like happiness and all that kind of stuff. And eventually got to a point where I observed it so heavily and so much that I realized that during my normal waking state, I feel perfectly good. I feel amazing, actually. And anytime that I ever tried to change that, it would make me basically desire to change it more, and just keep desiring to change it more, even though it was already perfect how it was. You see what I mean? So like, literally the only thing that I was doing was perpetuating a mind activity of a story that I was telling myself about something that I thought was going to happen from doing something in whatever circumstance. For me, the thing that was the biggest in this lifetime to let go of was attachment to substances. But for other people, I mean, sex was another one that was a really big one, but that one came easily, meaning like it came naturally. And the only reason that came naturally was because I started to experience such powerful states of consciousness from like storing my sexual energy and using it in more effective ways, you know, like using my breathwork techniques to be able to pull my energy up my spine and place it into the third eye, and place it into the heart, place it into the crown, experiencing bliss, experiencing these powerful Shakti shots shooting through my body, sometimes so powerful that it makes you feel like you're almost going to pass out, or it feels like you're going to vibrate out of your own body. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of similar to the same energy as like what you get from sexual stimulation, but instead of being centered in the sacral chakra, it's centered more in the heart, throat, and third eye. But it's the same kind of sensation. It just moves up a little bit, and then so that you don't have to release that kind of like physical life force energy, you release it in a different way. So maybe with tears, or maybe with laughter, maybe with like really, really powerful love or happiness, or like with really, really calm, just tranquil together energy. It's whatever kind of things. Like, it's like basically wherever you place this energy in your chakras is what you will experience in your waking state. And then for me, what I've noticed is that as I go up higher and higher, the world falls away more and more. Not physically, like I'm still here obviously, but it feels like I'm in the world but not of the world at all. Meaning like it feels literally like I'm walking the steps of God, like through my body, if that makes any sense. And I don't mean that in an egotistical way. What I mean is that it feels like I'm being moved by something divine, something more than myself. And it feels like I'm just a vessel for that energy to flow through of that godliness. And the more that I purify myself, and the more I purify my heart and my desires and my stomach and my throat and my everything, the more that I purify everything, the more that I feel like I'm being moved by something more and more divine. And what that feels like is literally the same feeling as if you were the divine. You see what I mean? So you get these divine feelings that start to flow through you. And they're very, very powerful, like to a point where you can be walking down the road, like literally just singing out loud, like in ecstasy for hours at a time. And then not care about any of the things that other people think about you at all. And I don't mean that in like you're trying to provoke other people using your word or whatever. I mean, like, you're literally just in your own world, like doing your own thing, praising everything, experiencing ecstasy. You know what I mean? So it's like you basically just got to learn how to disconnect yourself from the world and reconnect yourself into, or plug yourself back into something that is much more vast and beautiful than this physical material existence, And for me, all methods work, like I know that you see the tilak on my head, but that's just one method. You know what I mean? I've used a lot of methods. It's just that this method is the one that I'm choosing right now. And it's working really, really well. And it's causing a lot of love and different kinds of like openings of the heart. Some of the other ones have been, more here based or more here based or more here based, I've also developed a lot of energy down here, but I've learned how to move it to here to bring me a space of like power, but just enough power to be able to do the things that I need to do, not really to overpower other people. Or I could if I wanted to, but I don't want to. I want to use that to be able to serve. But all right, so this has been a good one. So I hope you guys learned something from this or whatever. So God bless you and have a good day. And thank you. Namaste.